This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. So Joe Biden was tasked with finding a cure for cancer, but a small team of Israeli scientists might have beaten him to the punch, at least according to this report out last week in the Jerusalem Post that I read. And, Amy...
A lot of people read that. We're like, what?
Well, sure.
It's a startling headline.
Jarring. And I'm sort of from the Ray Romano school of healthcare. So if I have a growth on one side of my body, as long as I have that same growth on the other side of my body, then I just figure the symmetry means it's fine.
Quickly, when was the last time you went to the doctor?
I had to do the sort of half-ass physical you have to do to get to keep your medical certificate for your private pilot's license.
Oh,
so that's
thank goodness you fly.
Yeah, that's
someone's holding you accountable.
So yeah, I don't. I basically I'm sort of the philosophy you just rub dirt on it, walk it off. Generally speaking. But with cancer, that's a little bit more difficult.
Yeah,
from what I understand.
Neosporin's not going to cure that.
So it's this is fascinating. Now, with some of these reports on medical advances or medical concerns, sometimes the journalists don't always get it right. So for some context and scale, it's always helpful to talk to a medical professional. So on this topic, we're pleased to have Eric Donnelly. He's a doctor, a radiation oncologist, actually, at Northwestern University's Feinberg School of Medicine. Dr. Connolly, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dan and Amy.
So one of the researchers said we'll be able to offer in a year's time a complete cure for cancer. This the Accelerated Evolution Biotechnologies executive. And the way they talk about this, I guess they've done some trials with mice. They're starting to move into clinical trials, is that they can sort of design antibodies to combat cancerous cells where you have them, and this is sort of an innovation sort of on the scale of the innovations to treat HIV. That's my understanding, but enlighten us.
Yeah, well, they definitely made some pretty major claims here with this report, and the technology that they're talking about is something that's been utilized in some other modalities. In cancer, we do have some different targeted therapies as well. You know, we have our antibody therapy, there's immunotherapy. Here they're kind of talking about a little bit different technology where they're going to be introducing several types of antibodies kind of at the same time to attack cancer from kind of many different angles. It sounds a little bit too good to be true, and I think it might be.
Well, do you think it was highly irresponsible for the Israeli company to claim that they have a cure for cancer?
Personally, I do. There's the kind of the headline statement, the effective from day one, the last just a few weeks, and will have no or minimal side effects.
Right.
I mean, each one of those statements is a little bit, in its own right, a major kind of red flag.
Now, other doctors I've heard talking about this on television shows and whatnot have said, first of all, cure is sort of the wrong word. It's a treatment. And that what we're potentially on the cusp of with this advance is a more effective treatment for certain types of cancer than we have at present, sort of exercising a little bit more restraint and qualification. Does that strike you as more accurate?
Yeah, that'd be something I would hope to be accurate, because within cancer there's many different types, and so to think that one treatment could have this kind of an effect across the board, kind of an overreach, to say the least.
With respect to the treatments for cancer now, the advances of medicine over the years, when we look back and say, well, we were treating this malady this way, and boy, that was a wrong way to do it. Are we going to look back, do you think, and say, for example, chemotherapy, radiation treatment was the wrong way to treat cancer? When we were doing it in the context of perhaps innovations like we're discussing here?
We may very well will, because at some point, hopefully we have something that mimics these statements in terms of the, less side effects, effective for all. But right now, those are the technologies that we have, and for the vast majority of patients, they work, and they work well.
Well,
they do come with some side effects.
Right.
Well, and I heard one of my dear friends is fighting colon cancer right now, and chemotherapy is in a pill form. When did that come to the forefront? I had no idea that they were using that.
Yeah, we think of chemotherapy as always being the same type of chemotherapy where it's delivered through an IV and you're nauseous and lose your hair, but there's many different types of chemotherapy that are, some are pill-based, some are delivered via shot or injection. So the pill-based forms have been around for about 5 to 8 years. It's been becoming more prevalent in different types of cancer. Obviously, it's a big convenience to the patients to not have to come in for an infusion every time when they can take a medication at home.
I want to go back to what these Israeli scientists offered in terms of a comparison, since we've seen advances in medicine be able to so much better treat HIV patients. One of the researchers, equating it to the triple drug cocktail that's helped change AIDS from being automatic death sentence to chronic but manageable disease. He said, we used to give AIDS patients several drugs, but we would administer them one at a time. During the course of the treatment, the virus mutated and the AIDS started attacking again. Only when patients started using a cocktail were they able to stop the disease. And that's what he's comparing their treatment to, sort of a personalized cocktail version of cancer treatment. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of an attempt that we've been using for a while now. Most of the chemotherapies, when we deliver them in combination with a couple of regimens. Sometimes we're limited in terms of how many chemotherapeutics we can give at the same time because of the possibility of side effects. I agree with most of what they've said here is that I think the next step in terms of the cure of cancer is not going to be just to eradicate cancer, but to make it in terms of more of like a HIV status where someone lives with the disease for a long period of time, and it's something that's more manageable for patients.
He suggested, again, I mentioned a cusp of beginning a round of clinical trials that he expects could be completed. This one researcher, speaking on behalf of the company, could be completed within a few years and would make the treatment available in specific cases. Is that also realistic that something like this, even in experimental form, could come online in a few years?
Highly unlikely based on what they've presented so far in terms of the cell lines that they're going to. You have to go from here to larger mouse-based models, and then from there into some human subjects. But even there, you're going to be starting with figuring out things like what dose is appropriate for these patients. How long do we give it for? And to be kind of jump through all those hurdles usually takes a number of years before you can kind of get to a true clinical trial in human subjects.
And I'm sorry. And with respect to human subjects, then would clinical trials deal with people at different stages, stage 1, stage 4, to test the drugs or the treatment's effectiveness with different people in different stages of cancer affliction and with different types of cancer? Is that part of it?
Yes, definitely. A lot of the new chemotherapeutics or new regimens are actually given in the metastatic setting, so the more advanced patients, and then they kind of, if found effective, start to make their way down to the earlier stages of cancer.
Now, besides getting a physical and getting your blood work drawn, Dan,
Right.
on an annual basis, are there any screenings we can do like for our lungs or for our heart or anything to help be preventative, to be proactive in this, or, for ovarian cancer or uterine cancer?
Yes, for certain types of cancer, we do have some good screening mechanisms. Breast cancer, we have mammograms. Colon cancers, we have colonoscopies. Prostate, we have PSA. Other ones, we have some screening tests. They're not as useful and not as applicable to all patients. So for some either current smokers or former smokers, there's CT scans of the lung. Other types of cancers, we just haven't developed a good screening test yet. Ovarian being one of those. Are kind of trying to work different ways to be able to screen better for ovarian cancer, but there are some, and your doctor could definitely talk with you about the different screening recommendations we currently have.
He is Eric Donnelly, Dr. Eric Donnelly. He's a radiation oncologist at Northwestern University's Feinberg School of Medicine. Dr. Donnelly, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate your insights.
Yeah. Thank you.
It was a pleasure, and he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
There's only one radio show in Chicago talking about today's biggest stories and telling you what they really mean. That show is this one, Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, The Answer.